A bad sales hire can cost you your brand, your trust, your
Woo!
credibility.
Welcome back to Revenue Remix, where I bring in experts to help you solve your challenges. I'm Summer Poletti, your host and founder of Rise of Us, where I help founders and CEOs avoid expensive mistakes in their sales investments. And today I have with me JMS, Shimon, and Sandy, and we are going to brainstorm about what a bad sales hire actually costs you, both financially and emotionally and momentumally, if that's a word, and then some tips from them on how you can do it better. And so I will start and then I'll just do this open forum. This is a little bit of a different format than what we usually do. And what I see is I see two types of founders coming to me. One has heard all the horror stories and wants none of it. And unfortunately, that's a rare founder who says, I want to do it right the first time because I want none of that horror story nonsense. But more often, I hear I should have called you sooner. And that makes me feel sad because I know that takes a lot for a founder to admit that. And also, I know that there's months of momentum lost and also like how much money? So let's first talk about what does a bad sales hire actually cost? And I'm just going to go around the room. JMS, why don't you go first?
Yeah, really, I think the cost of a bad sales rep comes down to a few things. One is there's the financial cost, there's the emotional cost. You said that earlier, and I think that's two different things. Because the financial cost is like, oh no, I had to pay a base salary for 6 months and then I fired them. The emotional cost is a lot of times worse because, to your point about founders saying, I'm not able to put a salesperson in, I'm the only one that can do it. Like the problem that most founders have that I've met is that they have to know how to do everything in their company. They have to be at least decent, if not the best at each part of their company. That's how they start their company. They literally did everything. At some point, they were the company by themselves. And so if they discover that they're not able to lead a salesperson, the mentality is, oh, it's an external problem. It's not an internal problem. It's sales isn't for me, for me to hire, or like my process isn't sellable unless I do it. And it's really hard to like let go of that ownership just because, it's that psychological thought. Like, I care the most about my company. Who better to get clients and to talk about how great it is than the person who cares about it more than anything in the whole wide world? Moi. And also, sales reps cost commission, and it's like, I want that money. So that's a little bit of a problem. And then I guess the other thing is when you're, hire a sales rep and then fire them and they get mad and then they sue you, or they go after all your, you know, customers or whatever because your non-compete was no good. Or yeah, it can get ugly as well. So you can really, it's probably not a good idea to make a really outgoing and energetic person with a lot of resources mad at you and your company because you didn't give them, in their mind, a fair shake.
Well, I will caution people, and I wish the guy was here who places first sales hires at SaaS companies because I'm channeling some of that energy right now because I work with him on that. If you need to grow and you need a sales strategy, and you're like, oh, that sounds hard, so I'm going to hire somebody. You have two options: either it fails miserably and your LinkedIn page gets hijacked, or it succeeds and your entire growth strategy lives in the head of an employee who can go take it somewhere. How many times have any of us seen that employee take it A to a competitor, and now you've just trained your top competitor, or B, started their own thing with all your crap, like
But the payroll
became a
launch lad?
competitor?
No.
Yeah, so it's just not a good strategy to try to hire out your growth strategy. Anyway, Shimon, why don't you tell us, what does a bad sales hire actually cost?
I'll tell you something from my point of view. I've been in the CS leadership role for a long time, and it's us and product scrambling with selling something that is not really what the company is selling. You get someone who's not. You get someone who doesn't know what to sell, which is basically the first question you should ask yourself. Are you ready for a new salesperson? Do you have the strategy in place? Do you have the playbooks, as they call in my world? Now, if you're not ready with that, then what you have is a salesperson who goes on his own without that strategy and is selling whatever seems to be sort of right. And then it gets to a CS, and the CS person is saying, "What did you sell?" And the CEO says, "No, no, no, we need this client." It goes to product, and they start adjusting the product according to the needs of that big sale they just made because they promised they would actually, check all the dots on this one. So everyone is scrambling in your organization. That is the real cost. You're moving away from where your product it should be and what they need to provide. What is the value that it needs to provide? And now you're catering for those few sales that were done. Everyone is proud, ringing the gong, and now you have to adjust the product. You have to adjust the the CS people. That's a big cost, and in most cases, it backfires because then resources are shifted away. I mean, you have finite resources now. All those resources are doing something else that is not what you plan to do in the next couple of quarters, and that's how a startup looks like usually at the beginning. So the first question to ask is, are you ready? Are you ready? I mean, do you have all this, you as the person who sold this product for a few times, or you should be, by the way, if you're a CEO, you should be the ones who's doing it the first few times. I met several who just immediately outsourcing it. Big mistake. Because you don't know what is actually the pain points, what they need to address, and what are the priorities. So if you do know that, document it. The question is, how are you ready? That's the case, because the cost can be immense.
By the way, the thing you were describing is the tail wagging the dog, right? That's
Yes.
how I always think about it. Yep.
Yes. I mean, I'm so strict about this because I spent time in operations and customer service before I moved over to the sales side of the house. So I was the one getting all that random crap. And I was told, figure it out, make it work. And then the sales reps are taking their victory lap and they're like, woo, and I was like, all you did was say yes to whatever they asked, and there's no process. How is that good selling if you just promise the sun and the moon and somebody else has to figure it out? And by the way, can I get a little taste of that commission you're getting?
Yes, and that the another cost to this is that you burn immediately some of the good salespeople who could have been really great for you because you did not prepare them. You set them to fail. The thing is here, you set to fail a few salespeople. Own it. Don't call it a failure. Call it a learning experience. Be ready next time. Call Summer.
That sounds like an educator.
So I'm co-founder of Miracle Max Marketing. So we help a lot of startups as well as scale ups with their go-to-market. And sales and marketing go hand in hand, right? Especially when you're getting started. So the thing I've been smiling about is JMS talked about a performance and behavior problem. Shimon's talking about a process and a focus and a fit problem. What I'm thinking about is all this points back to the one thing that really should keep founders up at night. A bad sales hire can cost you your brand, your trust, your credibility. So if you're getting started, you've set your company on a course. If you've taken investor money, you have sold a vision, and now you have this person out in the world who's maybe taking you off track. And that's costing you time, but really it's costing you trust and credibility. A good friend and former colleague of mine once said, marketing's sole job at a startup is to build a legendary brand. And that brand can be absolutely destroyed with one bad hire. And I think what we're talking about here is your first hires need to be the ambassadors of your brand. And they really, going back to Shimon's point, they really need to stay on course with what it is you're selling and to whom and why. They need to be clear on that. And they've got to have the best interests of your company in mind, right? They have to be a person that you can ultimately trust and that can stay focused and that you think will get you from point A to point B. I've seen very few places where the founding sales rep is the sales rep that's with your company 2-3 years later. Usually they're there for a bit. And I know JMS, you probably have a ton of experience and stories with where you focus, but your first ones really do need to be extensions of your brand, and they really do need to stay on course because otherwise you can't scale. You just can't scale in this kind of environment.
No, and I'm
just heard
super glad that you brought it to reputation. And JMS, I'm going to bring it right back around to you because this came from a payroll founder and he was ready to hire his first sales rep. And one of the things he told me when I was helping him find his first sales rep was I don't want somebody being all spammy and gross, like the ADP style of sales rep. JMS, I know but he was like, I built my company on my own reputation and my network, and I can't have somebody out there with my logo destroying that because you cannot get that back. So yes, Sandy, full circle here. How do they do it better, and some spicy stories too.
Well, I don't know if you heard that train from Shimon, but that was my train. I'm getting on his train because I'm on board with what you were saying. Sorry. No, actually, I do really like the point you brought up. Like the thing I was thinking about, and I scribbled this down, which is I've heard people say, like, is this a good salesperson? And the answer is almost irrelevant to whether or not they're going to be able to sell your product, because being able to sell anything is, to your point, relatively easy. If you just promise whatever the client wants, then great, you're going to close deals. But to sell specifically the thing you're good at and to navigate around the things that your product is bad at is a harder thing. And the problem that Shimon touched on that really kind of, and I think this actually goes back to Sandy's point about brand. When I started my company, and I think when lots of people start their companies, their pitch is just their story. I did this and then I did that, and that's why I came up with this solution, and that's why I now have a company that does this. When I went to Paylocity, I was one of their early sales reps. I think it was like sales rep number like 40 or something like that. And now they're like thousands of sales reps. Our sales deck, when we first got it, the first half of it was telling the story of Steve Sarowitz. And don't get me wrong, Steve's an awesome guy. I love Steve. He's got an amazing story. But like, how many sales reps need to be walking around the country going, Steve Sarowitz is 7 foot tall and weighs 150 pounds, soaking wet, which, by the way, is a direct quote from the script I had to memorize, right? Like, we were telling this story about how Steve wanted to do this and then he wanted to do that. And then next thing you know, he came up with this great solution. And by the way, like, I'm not saying that the pitch was bad. I closed lots of deals with that pitch. But at some point, if you're going to point someone in your direction to like drive revenue, to Sandy's point about brand, they need to have a unified message that's not about one person. Because like, guess what? Steve Sarowitz doesn't work at Paylocity anymore. Like, they went public. They became publicly traded. He stepped down as the president, and then now he's just a board member. And, now the guy's he makes movies now. Like, he's not doing anything in the payroll industry. Garfield movie. It's a good one.
Okay, so I feel like we've beat up founders enough.
Are you still in every big deal because you can't afford to lose them, or every large client because they have your phone number and they know that if they call you, they can get what they want? Are you the best closer, or does nobody else really actually know how to do it? There's a lot of nuance there. Some of it's a hiring problem, some of it's a system problem. And if you can't really tell the difference, that's probably why the last salesperson didn't work out. DM me on LinkedIn if you want to actually get out of sales finally.
I want to talk about, and Shimon, you kind of took us there, so I want you to go last, actually, to see if you can add something extra. So Sandy, why don't we start with you? Like, what can they do? And I'm talking about the startups and the scale-ups. So the folks that listen to the show, they're looking at their first hire or maybe their fourth. It's a small team. It's still either founder-led or founder-dependent. So what can they do better to make the first or fourth sales hire actually stick?
Yeah, I think the first thing, especially with founders, when it's your first sales rep, chances are you as founder, you're doing all the sales. I think to JMS's point, I don't remember if we were recording at that point, but they're doing everything. So if selling is one of the things that you were doing, I think the most important thing you need to think about and really examine is, what is my sales process? They may or may not have documented it. My experience with founders, especially the technical ones, the engineers, I have a love and hate with engineer founders, but the thing I love about them is they already think in systems. So they already think about, hey, I'm going to follow this process. This is step 1, step 2, step 3. Do not deviate from the process. If you're a creative mind, it drives you crazy. But if you have the engineering systems mind, you can follow that process. If a founder can document their process, they can share it with someone. They can train them on it, good or bad, right? At least they know that they can follow it, they can refine it, and then hopefully they can scale it. So if you haven't done that part, I think that is important. I have worked with founders who have hired kind of their the yin to their yang, like a completely opposite founding salesperson who's then become like their partner in crime, the guy or gal who can do the thing that they can't. That to me is more rare. That's more about alchemy and chemistry than it is about the systems bit of it. So I think short of finding your unicorn founding sales rep, the most important thing you can do is really get real and get on paper what your process is, because I think that will also help you figure out, okay, now that I know what my process is, this is the kind of person that can thrive and can actually replicate this and do this. I think until you know better as a founder, I think you got to trust the way that you're selling, good or bad, is the way that they're probably going to learn to sell. I don't know. I think, JMS, I know you've spent tons of time placing sellers. To me, have a different point of view on this, but would love to hear your thoughts on like how to translate the founder-led sales thing into like the right fit for the first seller and what they need to do
Big
different.
segue. He was next.
Yeah,
Good job.
I'll
You
take
host
it.
a
Well, I was
podcast,
going to
I
ask
can
Sandy,
tell.
Sandy, do you do, EOS? Have you gotten
Hmm.
down that rabbit hole in your life? Or does anybody know EOS, the entrepreneurial operating system? Okay, I've not gone down the rabbit hole. In fact, I've got one of the books on my desk because someone was like, "You got to read this book," and then they gave it to me, and I haven't read it yet. But I know because I've had to place candidates at places that do EOS that everyone always talks about having it delegated between a visionary and an operator, right? Somebody that has the ideas and someone that actually executes the ideas. And I was thinking about that a lot, Sandy, when you were going through, your kind of thoughts on that. But in terms of like making these salespeople able to be a replication of the owner, I think that's a fool's errand. All right. I think they need to be likable and personable on their own. And I think the way that you do that is you hire people that are good at communicating, that are good at taking rejection, that are good at going out into the world and getting beat up. And then you give them a message that's consistent, that they can iterate on, that they can come back and say, "Hey, I've been doing this pitch and this is where it gets stuck." But the problem is like, what ends up happening is people say, "Oh, I hired this," like let's say you hired like the best sales rep in the world from ADP or from Paychex to come work at your payroll company. They only have the ADP or Paychex like pitch in their head. Like you're not a national publicly traded company. Like it's a different conversation about why people choose to go with you. And the answer, as much as people don't want to admit it, it's not because they really like you. It's because you're doing something that has value. There's a return on the investment. I give you money, you do something that provides more value to me than the value of that money I gave you. That's what a business transaction is. And don't get me wrong, there are plenty of businesses that operate like charities because it's like, that's my buddy, so I'm going to do this for him for free or for discounted. But those are bad businesses, right? Those are the ones that sell and say, "I don't have any money. I'm working with zero margin." Like you need someone that can communicate it. So I don't know. I feel like this is now I have to throw it to Shimon because I feel like this is like your thing, right? Because your whole thing is working with founders that are like trying to figure out that scale factor. It's probably more relevant than my knowledge.
Yes, founders entertain themselves usually with the wrong priorities. That's what they start. They're thinking about. I'm talking about the small and the startups. The ones I work with are trying to figure out different things that do not, you don't do first, like find a co-founder instead of, or so salespeople are not usually is one of those sometimes misguided priority. They need to sell first. They need to figure out first. So I think to your point, use AI now. There are so many tools. You don't need to create the process from scratch or document this and figure out where you put your notes. Just record all your conversations with people. Figure out what worked, and have AI kind of identify and screen for you what is the right process for you to do that. Now, I think the most important thing is to record this, not necessarily writing also what worked, but kind of see what actually is the processes that worked, what was the outcome, what was actually the transition points where actually something worked for you. Also, if it's already an ongoing company, usually the ones I joined in, where they already raised money, they already had a few salespeople in there selling, they're actually looking for new sales. I think it's important to make sure they shadow more, which does not happen a lot. They do not shadow experienced salespeople and see how they and what they and ask, have the opportunity to ask questions. They're being tossed in the water. I was kind of surprised at this, but a lot of times new salespeople are in the company, they get the pitch deck, they have to memorize, like you, JMS, had to do, memorize something and talk to
Go
people.
read this.
The talk to people and see how you're doing. No, dedicate time to shadowing. I think it's important to learn from other people's experiences, from other people's, from the reactions you get from other from clients or potential or prospects, and be ready for this. So I think shadowing is, being an apprentice, kind of be on the shadowing side for a while. I think it's very, very important for salespeople. Another aspect is what I recommend to salespeople, even the ones that are yes early, and including marketing, also product. Bring them early into don't close yet. Bring them before. Don't let them kind of. I mean, they're afraid to do that because they they think that the CS is going to ruin their deal because they're going to say, oh, we are not doing this. This is not what we're actually the product of the company, and don't promise this. But it will help you. If you bring CS early, they have experience with clients already. They know what clients are looking for. So bring them early. You don't have to accept whatever they say, but have a cadence with product, have a cadence with marketing, have a cadence with CS. Before you're just in front of clients, you have to have an internal cadence with other teams. And if you can bring them early, product, marketing, and CS, even to listen to this conversation on the recorded Zoom, do that. Get notes, learn from them. Even if you don't want to bring them to the conversation, get the notes there, understand the nuances. You'll be a better salesperson.
Shimon, you said use AI, but you didn't say what AI. I want to hear more. I'm sorry for interrupting. I was very curious to hear in what context are you using AI for helping with sales processes? If you don't mind me asking.
I'm not in the sales process, but I think that, there are lots of technologies. I use regular Zoom recorded and actually take whatever not the recap, the whole transcript and have it analyzed. Before there was AI, I was just, if the company could afford Gong,
Using
I would
your
use
brain.
Gong. Not just brain. Brain is, it's too many. People don't write everything and they don't write all the nuances. And I think Gong is an amazing tool to actually record the nuances and the tone of voice and changes and things like that. And it worked very well for CS teams as well. I'm just saying, if you don't have to go all the way. You can use just the free tools, Granola, Firefly. You can use Zoom, even the recorded Zoom, and put this in. I tried this several times, even with Gemini, and just took the transcript and asked really good questions about this conversation. And it didn't pick everything. It didn't pick the transition or the moods of people, or how their face changed when you said something. This it did not pick. This is something you need to actually record yourself. But it will pick conversational anecdotes. It will say, this guy showed interest when this was mentioned, or there was a pushback on those instances. Here is what actually worked. This is what they're interested in. You learn from those interactions, and you can, after you do this with several conversations, you can start building this process that we've been talking about.
You mentioned Gong, and then you're talking about the nuances and the facial expressions. A business friend of mine who's been on the show a couple of times, he is the co-founder of Sales EQ. Go check that out. What they did is they programmed in what Gong misses. And because you can take the transcript from Granola and you could shove it in a Claude project and it knows the words, but like what his platform does is also looks at, like, are they paying attention? Did they go like, it catches those things. So anyway.
Yes. The thing is, the humans on the other sides are your clients. It's not an AI who's your client, and they pick your vibe. They pick the way you translate yourself. It's actually one way to identify if a salesperson, what was not working for a salesperson. That's my expertise, to understand where they come from emotionally and how to fix that.
And I think one thing to add to
Please
this
say.
that I was thinking about while Shimon was talking about just talking about using AI and sort of the call transcripts and sort of doing the autopsy on the not to get grim, but doing the analysis post call. I think one thing that founders need to realize, the one thing that maybe need to do differently is I would ask founders to challenge themselves and really ask, how much of your time are you spending coaching your team? Because sorry to add another job to your plate, but that is another hat that you wear. You also need to be the coach, especially if you've invested in a seller. I think to JMS's point earlier, yes, they've got to have great communication skills. They've got to be able to follow a methodology and a process, regardless of what that is. But then they've got to be able to come back and get feedback, whether it's through technology or through collaboration. In my experience, the absolute best sellers I've ever met are the ones who are constantly looking for feedback. They'll go to CS, they'll go to product, they'll say, what did I miss? What else should we ask? Can you join me on this? What else can I share? Like, they're very curious and they're very interested in getting better, and they're eager for feedback. So I think from a founder's perspective, kind of taking it back to what you were asking, is what can they do differently? I would ask yourself, before you write off this salesperson as a bad hire or a bad investment. What's been your role as coach? How would we grade you as coach? And like, could that have, what could that have done to sort of turn things around? And I think you'd be surprised just in reflecting on what that answer might be.
Yeah,
And
because
Sandy, you
usually
said
it's
something
like, I
that,
don't have time to coach them. Just give me that deal. I'll close it. Right? Yes.
but like, I mean, and that's the other thing is like, how often do you see the coaches go into the middle of a football game and say, let me quarterback this play? Like, the whole point of coaching is that you now don't have to play the game. Like, and by the way, going back to what Shimon was saying about shadowing, like this is something when I was a early Paychex rep, like early days at Paychex and early days at Paylocity, and anytime I had a new sales process I had to learn, there was two kinds of shadowing that happened. There was the beginning where it was like, okay, you go follow the guy that knows how to do this and watch what he does and copy him. But the more valuable long-term shadowing was like on year 3, 4, 5, and 6, when my managers would come with me on sales calls and they wouldn't say a thing. They would just sit there with a notepad and we'd walk out of the room and they would say, maybe I shouldn't say they would say, occasionally someone might say, did you notice that guy started tapping his toes about 10 minutes in and you kept going? Like, hey, I was just sitting here reading everyone's room language. Back when we had humans instead of AI and we couldn't just outsource it to a camera watching bot, I had, Brad Garner sitting there next to me watching someone like this. And we'd walk out and he said, you lost that sale 10 minutes in and we could have had lunch already. It was just like,
That's tough. That's tough.
Painful.
But that's why you record the calls too, is because sometimes you say, I need to go back and hear, especially when you like think you understood what happened and then you lose a sale. Or even weirder, they buy something that you didn't expect and it's like, I need to go figure out what happened. Like why did they take a left when I was expecting a right? And how come I didn't pick it up in the conversation? Like what was it I was talking about? So yeah, I don't know. It was burning in my head because the scalability factor, Sandy. And like the other thing is, you mentioned Shimon, and I was thinking, I got scared you were going to suggest using AI to like draft up a pitch for someone who's stuck in like an owner story. Cause like, as I'm sure Sandy can attest to, like everyone smells AI created marketing material a mile away now. And like making it feel human is like a whole nother thing. So I'm glad that's not where your head went on that one.
And it's just the AI is a good. I never ask it to write. I ask it to critique.
Mm,
And I think
I
this
like
is
that.
the way to do that, is to get each one has whatever his own style, and I can tell you that at some point, I'm sure you, JMS, when you were doing a pitch, you use your own. You left the script. You kind of felt the room. You brought yourself, your own personality, and the way you. And this is actually what sells. The human connection. It's not actually I mean, maybe the pitch in the first few deals, but then you bring you bring you, and people appreciate your personality and how you bring yourself when you sell. Which is, by the way, another advice I think to your point, Summer, is it's important to see if the personality of a person, of how they it's not just the selling, it's how they come across.
The
Do
vibe
I
check.
do I immediately do I like this person? Do I like that person? Because this is exactly what happens in the sales. Sometimes you also find a way to deal with this, and you're not doing everything according to the book, and you still make a sale because you bring yourself, you bring something that the other person appreciate. You bring your personality, and so I think this is the key to hiring a person, Summer. And I think it's that would you do you like this person? Do you think, it's the first test. Do you like this person? Does he come across as a likable person? And I met so many salespeople that it doesn't matter if they open their mouth and said something, I would not buy it for them. And I was the CS VP sitting next to that salesperson, but I felt the pitch was wonderful, is amazing. But there is something that did not come across as a person. Do I trust what he's
To
saying?
show you
I
care.
felt,
Yeah.
yes. I
Yeah.
don't,
You have
Well,
to
it's
you
show
can
something
you
did
teach
care.
not
people
go through.
processes, right? You can't teach people how to interact with other humans. You can only teach processes and steps. And I mean, to
Absolutely.
Summer's point, yeah.
I just heard you, JMS. I can tell you that anything you try to sell me, I would buy. It's just because
I
no,
have a
you come
bridge.
across as a like person. No, I'm not buying the printer. I have one. And no, but what I'm saying is that certain people come across as good people, the ones you want to listen more, the ones you feel that you trust them right there. And this is the key aspect that you need to ask yourself as a founder. You find someone is this a likable person? Would I actually trust this person if he starts speaking about a product? It doesn't matter. I mean, anyone can recite this pitch. And but I would say I think this is the first key to it. And I think the successful ones that I met throughout my long life in enterprise and startups are the successful ones have something that they connect on a human level. They are likable. They come in different shapes and humor and everything, but they are likable. You want to hear what they're saying. And I think this is the first test.
Yeah, I like
Yeah,
it.
for
Okay.
me, the most memorable sales reps are the ones who are curious and the ones who are like earnest, like they want to get better. They want to help a client. They want to collaborate better. Like something comes through that's just very genuine.
Yeah. Yeah. It's why I don't like pitch decks. Like, give a sample set of questions and let them ask questions. I hate pitch decks. Just
Well, I mean, but
another
pitch
pod
personally.
decks
episode.
are designed for scale. Like that's the
Yeah,
point. Like
I
and
get it.
like when I was at Paychex, there was a guy who I shadowed at the beginning of my job, and we were selling payroll to a gas station. Right. So we go into this gas station, and there's not an office. We're just standing at the counter talking about payroll. And the guy, the sales rep I'm with, just like walks up and he just puts his arm on the shoulder. He's like, "So, why am I here?" Like, and he just like starts talking to the guy, and I'm like, "Dude, you forgot the first part of the script. Hi, I'm Joe and Joe, blah, blah." Like, you didn't do the script. Like, and I went out in the parking lot. I was like,
Yeah.
"What the heck, dude? I just memorized the script, and you didn't say a single word from it." And he was like, "Yeah, because at some point you're just having conversations with people."
Yes.
But if you the other side though is like Shimon, if you just hire people based on vibe checks, this is how I meet these owners that have like 30 really attractive people in their office that aren't hitting their numbers because they're like,
Yes.
"Oh, I just really thought they passed the vibe check." And it's like, "No, you're just into blondes," you know? But
Seen
but
that.
the counterpoint to that is I think that's where like having the messaging figured out conceptually in a sales pitch that they're not going to give Summer necessarily, but having like here's like the ideal pristine perfect version of it, and now let's put it through the vessel that is a likable person that has a good vibe check. And the worst part is if they are a good vessel, they're going to interview great because they can sell the hell out of their own story because they know it inside and out. And if you don't give them a story to sell, they're going to fail. They don't have a story to sell if you just drop them into the field and say, "Our price is $10, pep them, good luck. Here's a laptop." Like they need a story, and someone has to craft it, and the brand has to echo it, and then the people have to reinforce it.
Yeah, totally.
Total
Okay, so
package.
we do not have time. We touched on so many different things that I wish we had an extra hour, but I'm going to bring it home, and I'm going to bring it home with something that I hear from people who don't want to do it right. And that is, this sounds like it takes a long time. I need to grow right now. I've kind of hit a plateau and I got to get out of sales and I'm going to hire somebody. And it's like, okay, here's all the stuff you need to do in order to make sure it succeeds. Well, that sounds like a lot of work. And that sounds like it's going to take a long time. I'm just going to hire. And to that person, I would say there's no reason why you can't work in tandem. Start your search and start building your stuff at the same time. And, you can have your cake and eat it too, is all I will say to the person who is trigger happy, because founders like to do stuff and not so much like to plan stuff for the most part. So thank you all for your insights. And for those of you listening in the gym or the car, I appreciate you too. And I will see you all next week.